Far too often, homeowners move into a new home, they buy a new home, or they build a new home that requires a septic system, but they really have no knowledge of what a septic is, how it works, or what they should do to take care of it. Today, we're going to look at a LPP septic system, a low-pressure pipe system, and this is a very common system in Delaware. It accounts for somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40% of installations, according to our experience. All septics start at the same place, and that's a pipe connecting the septic tank to the house. That's called the sewer. Now, inside the septic tank, you can see there's a hole there. What that does is it allows the solids to separate to solids that float on top and solids that sink to the bottom, and then the liquids go through that hole into the outlet chamber of the tank, which is what you're looking at. On an LPP, then a pipe connects the outlet side of the tank to the dosing tank or the pump tank. And that's where all our controls and pumping equipment are. Now, the important thing about LPPs or any pressure system in Delaware is the control box, which you can see mounted on the board. We're still working on installing it. The most important thing about that control box is the timer. The timer tells the pump when it's allowed to run, how long it's allowed to run, and it's based on the design, based on the bedrooms of the home. Now, one of the main features of the control box is to prevent people from overusing or abusing their septic system, because it only allows the pump to run the way that it was designed to. The control box also serves as a central connection point for the pump and the floats located inside the pump tank. The pump size is determined by the engineer, and here you can see a flow adjustment device to make sure we get the perfect flow on the system. And here we have the two floats. The bottom float is to tell the pump or the control box whether or not there's enough wastewater for the pump to come on safely. If the pump comes on when there's not enough wastewater in the tank, it could burn the pump up. And the top float is the alarm float. That tells the control box whether the wastewater has reached the height in the tank that there's most likely a problem of some kind, or at least the system's being used much heavier than it was designed to be used for. The pipe from the pump exits the pump tank and then travels out to wherever the drain field is going to be. And that line that connects the drain field and the pump tank, we call the transmission line. It can be different sizes. Typically, it's 2 or 3 inches in diameter, and it can be any number of different lengths. It can be anywhere from 5 foot to thousands of feet. I'd say the average length of a transmission line is probably around 100 feet. The transmission line connects to the manifold, and the manifold is the start of the drain field. Ultimately, the manifold's purpose is to take a single line coming from the pump and turning it into however many laterals the system was designed to have. So if we have 7 laterals, we'll make 7 standpipes. And sometimes you have a configuration where you have 7 standpipes and then you have 7 laterals going one direction and 7 laterals going the opposite direction, giving you a total of 14 laterals with 1 manifold. So there's all kinds of different configurations we can come up with to accommodate any type of site's circumstances. A manifold's typical size in Delaware is about 2 inch. Sometimes it's 3 inch, but most of the time it's 2 inch. The laterals connect to the manifold, and the laterals are one of the most important parts of the system because it's how the wastewater gets into the ground. The engineer determines all the specifics about the lateral, including the size pipe that we're using, the hole size, the spacing of the holes, how many holes we have per lateral. All of that's determined by the engineer and is on the septic design. It's very important that we accurately do all of it because at the end, we're going to test the system for head. And what that means is we fill the dosing tank or the pump tank with water. We install a standpipe on the lateral furthest away from the pump. And we turn the pump on and we see how high the water comes in that standpipe. That standpipe's height is determined by who? That's right, by the engineer. And so we want that water during the head test to come just flush to the top of that standpipe. If the water does come just flush with that standpipe, then we're great. If it doesn't, then we need to use the flow adjustment device. In this case, it was a ball valve to see if we can adjust the flow level to meet the top of that standpipe. You can see the ends of the laterals, and they have little plugs that we screw on and screw off. The purpose of those is to be able to flush each lateral out every so often, and unfortunately, most people never do it, but it really should be done every 3 to 4 years. The reason for that is to keep the sludge that builds up with wastewater in general from accumulating in the pipe and blocking off any of the holes. Now it's time to go ahead and get these laterals in the ground. And the way that we do that is with a trencher. In Delaware, LPP trenches are 12 inches wide, and most trenchers aren't set up that wide, so we have to have ours custom built just to trench 12 inches wide. You can do this with an excavator with a 1-foot bucket as long as you scrape the sidewalls of the trench to make it porous. I don't think it's a preferred method, but it is still done for those that don't have access to a trencher setup like ours. So the first thing we do is make sure the soils are dry enough to install the septic. And we also want to verify with a couple of boreholes that they are the types of soils listed on the soil evaluation and on the permit. Then we shoot our elevations, and our elevations are very important. We want the water to soak into the ground completely evenly. So we want it soaking into the ground at the same rate up near the manifold as it is down near the end where the plug is. And in order to do that, we have to have these trenches dead level. And we go to great care to make sure the bottom of the trench is porous along with the sidewalls. If we see any areas that aren't porous, we scuff them up with a shovel or rake and make sure that they are porous. And then we make sure that they are level, and we use a transit to do that. And we're very, very precise with this. We get this right, and then we know exactly where our stone level needs to be in comparison to the bottom of the trench. I mentioned that we check the soils to see how dry they are. The soils need to be very dry on an LPP installation in the area where the stone is being installed. The reason for that is if it's wet, damp, moist, it's going to smear the soils. And when the trench is covered up, it's going to have less of an ability to get the water from the stone into the ground because a lot of that structure is going to be smeared off or sealed off. You want a very, very porous sidewall. So after we get the trench trenched, get it leveled, we put dams in place, and we usually put those every 20 feet, and they basically hold up the pipe, but they also separate the different areas of stone. So if you have a 60-foot lateral, you're going to have 3 areas on that lateral that are 20 feet, and they're going to be separated by a dam that's 1 foot. Now, the reason for that is to help make sure we get equal distribution. Even if there's a little bit of a slope on the trench at one part or another, these dams will help make sure that each section is getting dosed evenly. So after we get the pipe in the trench and we get it centered and in the dams, we hold the pipe off the bottom of the trench, the required amount, which is about 7 inches, and then we install the stone. And we install very, very specific kinds of stone because you don't want dirty stone or small stone in a septic system because it can plug things off. You want nice washed stone, and you want to make sure that it's at least, in Delaware, it's 3/4 inch to 2.5 inch in size. And so we very gently build a nice 9-inch thick layer of stone all the way around the pipe with the pipe in the very center. And we build it 9 inches because that's what the requirement is in Delaware. All LPP stone beds or in the trenches there need to be 9 inches in height. And so we use the transit again to compare it versus the bottom of the trench to the top of the stone. And we usually try to put just a little bit extra in there because what will happen is it'll settle when you cover it up. You want to make sure you end up with a full 9 inches when everything's all said and done and the system's being used. Now you can see quite a few people on the job site at the time of the installation of the drain field, and we do that for a reason, because the more eyes you have on things, the better the details are going to be taken care of. We have one guy doing one specific operation. One guy's on the pipe, one guy's running the transit, one guy's running the machine, one guy's on the trencher, one guy's doing the tie par, and they just work together magically like a well-oiled machine to make sure every system is installed perfectly. When the trenches are all done being trenched, the pipe's in and the stone's in, we put tie par on top of the stone, and this black tie par does a really great job at keeping the dirt out of the trenches. Once we get all the trenches in, we'll get the inspection by the engineer, and then we'll cover this system up. So now you know way more than you ever wanted to know about LPP septic systems. As a homeowner, the most important things you probably want to know is make sure you get your LPP septic system pumped out every 2 to 3 years, depending on how many people you have living with you. Make sure that you get your laterals flushed out every 3 years. and make sure that you're flushing things that are appropriate. These are basic general septic system guidelines. We have more at our website at willeyco.com. If you really want to make sure your LPP septic system lasts for a very long time in the state of Delaware, make sure you have Willey & Company install it. Or at the minimum, if you purchased your home and it already had a septic installed, that's fine. Just go to willeyco.com, sign up for one of our service contracts. Our service contracts are designed to make sure people's septic systems are lasting as long as they can possibly last. I really appreciate you joining me for this video, and I can't wait to see you on the next video.